What are the world's most difficult languages? Well, according to the Foreign Service Institute, it's these 5. And today we're going to compare the 3 most widely spoken languages on this list: Arabic, Mandarin, and Japanese. To answer the question, what is the hardest language for English speakers to learn? بس يا براين ليه المفروض اننا بنسمع كلامك؟ انت بس امريكي اللي بيعمل فيديوهات عن اللغات في يوتيوب. そうですね。でも僕はこれらの言語を何年も一人で勉強していましたよ。所以说实话，我知道是什么让他们变得很困难，而且没有那么困难。So let's dive in. First of all, let me explain how I'll be comparing these languages, because in my opinion, there are really 3 criteria that make learning a given language more or less difficult. 1, pronunciation, 2, reading and writing systems, aka text, and 3, grammar. Everything else, in my opinion, is either true for every language or else largely determined by these factors. The battle for hardest pronunciation. I want to start with Japanese here because, believe it or not, Japanese pronunciation is actually relatively easy for English speakers. More or less every sound in the language is also present in English, the possible exceptions being hu and which require some slight adjustment. Now, Japanese does also have something called pitch accent, which determines whether a syllable is pronounced with a slightly higher or lower tone. For instance, the word hashi means chopsticks, and hashi means bridge. Now, that sounds a bit confusing, but keep in mind that English does something pretty similar. Consider this word, for instance. We might pronounce it as present, as in a gift, but it could also be present, as in I will present the information. Now, technically that's emphasis and not pitch accent, but in my opinion, if you listen to Japanese audio on a regular basis, you'll get familiar with the concept over time. So for pronunciation, I give Japanese a difficulty rating of 4 out of 10. Okay, Mandarin pronunciation, and we all know what this is going to be about. Those tones. Unlike Japanese and Arabic, Mandarin is a tonal language, which means that every syllable is pronounced according to a specific pitch pattern, and different patterns create different meanings. For instance, ma means mom, ma means horse, ma means to scold, and ma means something like rough or coarse. So the sentence ma literally means mom scolds the rough horse. And to make it a question, we could also add the question marker, which is of course ma. Ma. Does mom scold the rough horse? Now look, that's a bizarre example, and in reality, no one would actually say something like that. But as you can see, learning to use tones correctly is essential for any Mandarin learner. Difficulty level, 9 out of 10. And finally, Arabic. Arabic is not a tonal language, alhamdulillah, but it does have some sounds that are pretty bewildering for English speakers. At the top of that list, I would put qaf, ha, kha, dha, ghain, and of course, the granddaddy of challenging Arabic consonants, ayn. Now, mastering these sounds on their own is difficult, but learning to string them together at a natural pace takes massive dedication. And I can tell you that after 7 years of studying Arabic, I still struggle with saying the very simple phrase, good morning. Sabah al-khair. The ha and the kha that close together is tough. Now look, Arabic speakers will understand what you're saying even if you sound like a janky robot. Assalamu alaikum. But speaking Arabic naturally is a very different proposition. And with that in mind, I give Arabic pronunciation a 9 out of 10 difficulty rating. The battle for hardest language to read. Okay, let's start with Arabic this time. As you may know if you've watched my channel, Arabic has an alphabet with 28 letters, or 29 if you include this little fellow, Hamza. Anyway, there are vowels and consonants, and each letter represents a specific sound. You get the idea. But there's a hitch, a big one. Short vowel sounds, that kind of thing, are almost never notated in Arabic script. For instance, this word can be alim, to know, alam, flag, or ilm, science. And it's up to you to figure out which one it is based on context. And that tricky little feature makes Arabic much harder to read than a language like Hindi or Greek, because it's very tough to sound out words accurately. Difficulty rating, 7 out of 10. Okay, pretty challenging, but what about Mandarin? Well, Mandarin, of course, has no alphabet whatsoever. Instead, it has thousands of characters, which each represent a specific word, or sometimes several different words. For instance, this character can be zhong, meaning heavy, or chong, which means to repeat. Likewise, this character can be jia, meaning vacation, or jia, meaning fake. Now, as you might imagine, this presents a challenge for the student of Mandarin, and if you want to read native text, books, newspapers, things like that, you'll need to memorize somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 of these individual characters to feel comfortable doing so. And if you want to write those characters by hand, you'll also need to learn the proper stroke order for each one. Oh my. But Brian, I've heard that Chinese can be written in either traditional or simplified characters. What if I just learn the simplified ones? They must be easier, right? Yeah, sure. Simplified characters, which are used on the Chinese mainland, are slightly streamlined sometimes, but still require a huge investment of time and energy to master. And if you visit Taiwan, Hong Kong, or most Chinese communities around the world, you'll find the text is largely written in traditional characters anyway. So the true scholar will want to learn both. Difficulty rating, 10 out of 10. When it comes to reading and writing, however, Japanese is in a class of its own. It has not one, not two, but 3 different writing systems: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. And to reach a high level in the language, you'll need to learn all of them. Fortunately, hiragana and katakana are syllabaries, which are similar to alphabets. What's the difference? In an alphabet, each letter represents a specific sound that can be connected to other sounds to create a syllable. For instance, in English, the letter K, ka, plus the letter A, equals the syllable ka. In a syllabary like hiragana, the syllable ka is represented by a single character, ka. And likewise, there's ki, ke, ku, and ko. Get the idea? And katakana are used in exactly the same way. Ka, ki, ke, ku, ko. So why does Japanese have 2 syllabaries that do basically the same thing? Well, katakana, this one, is specifically used for words with a non-Japanese origin or flavor. For instance, we can write the word uchi, house, in hiragana, but we would write the word apato, apartment, in katakana because, as you can hear, it's a loan word from English, apato. But wait, there is yet another writing system, and it's a doozy, kanji. Kanji are derived from traditional Chinese characters. You remember those, right? And their meanings are often distantly related. For instance, in Japanese, this would be daijoubu, meaning all good or okay. But in Mandarin, it would be dazhangfu, which means a big man. There's a connection, right, but it's loose. So while knowing Chinese characters will definitely help you read Japanese kanji, you'll still need to clock some serious hours on Anki or Wanikani or read the kanji, whatever you're into. So for reading and writing, I give Japanese a difficulty rating of 9.5 out of 10. Whoa, curveball, why is Mandarin harder than Japanese? Well, hiragana and katakana are actually pretty easy to learn. You can probably do it in a long weekend if you're dedicated. And they can get you pretty far-ish. And if you learn 1,000 or so kanji on top of that, you'll be able to read it around an 8th grade level. For Mandarin, you would need to learn roughly 3 times as many characters to reach that same level of proficiency. To me, that's definitely tougher. The battle for hardest grammar. All right, folks, it's the final round, and this time we're starting with Mandarin. Why? Because when it comes to learning grammar, Mandarin is actually pretty straightforward. It has no verb conjugations, no tenses, no gendered nouns, no adjective agreement, all the nightmare stuff that makes you want to bang your head against a wall. With Mandarin, just a handful of particles get pretty much the whole job done. Possession, the past, questions, suggestions, passive voice, adverbs, present continuous, and this one can make an object a subject. There are a few more, but that's most of what you need to get by. And as an added bonus, sentence structure is just like English. Subject, verb, object. Doesn't sound so bad, right? 6 out of 10. Well, fun's over now because we're talking about Arabic grammar. Where's my coffee? Actually, I have a complete video dedicated to the challenges of learning Arabic, but for those of you who haven't yet seen every video I've ever made, 1, shame on you, and 2, here's a very incomplete list of some of the things that just might make your head spin. For starters, all that stuff that doesn't exist in Mandarin grammar, Arabic's got 'em, and we can add to that broken plurals, sun and moon letters, verbal nouns, elative adjectives, an accounting system that treats non-animate objects as feminine when there are between 2 and 10 items. And that's for spoken Arabic, the easy version. Standard Arabic has even more complexities, including no less than 6 distinct grammatical moods. Whoa. So what's the rating? 8.5 for spoken Arabic, 10 out of 10 for standard Arabic. Whew. But what about Japanese? Well, Japanese grammar is also deeply challenging, but for very different reasons. The main one being that sentences are constructed in a way that's completely unfamiliar to English speakers. In addition, Japanese relies on a system of 188 different particles to assign functions to individual words in a sentence. And on top of that, meaning is often implied rather than directly expressed, which means lots of words are dropped. Subjects, objects, even verbs. And as you may be aware, Japanese also uses honorific speech to show respect. And I'm not just talking about throwing in a Mr. and Ma'am. Verbs actually conjugate differently depending on who you're talking to. Oh, and did I mention it's the fastest spoken language in the world? All of which is to say, it's not like English. However, Japanese does make use of many English loanwords. Kohi, terebi, hoteru, which makes learning Japanese vocabulary at least slightly easier. With that in mind, I give Japanese grammar a difficulty rating of 9.5. The final verdict. It's judgment time, so let's look at the scoreboard. Ooh, pretty close. But to reach our final verdict, we actually need to adjust things slightly. We're going to double these two scores. Why? Because learning to read and understand language is, in my opinion, more important than mastering proper pronunciation. So our final scores are Arabic, 40 points, Mandarin, 41 points, and Japanese, 42 points. But wait a minute, we gave Standard Arabic a slightly more difficult rating in the grammar category, which means that Standard Arabic earns a total score of 43. Ladies and gentlemen, Standard Arabic takes the #1 spot as the toughest language for English speakers to learn, in my opinion. Did I get it wrong? Write a comment below and let me know what you think. Guys, thanks for watching. Good luck with your language studies. Sayonara, zaijian, and ma salama.